There's Paul McStay. Paul McStay with the open goal. 21 minutes into the second half. The Celtic end goes wild.
And they gave us James McRory and Paul McStay. They gave us Johnston, Tully, Murdoch, Gold and Hay. And most of the football greats have passed through Parkhead's gates. But to play football the Glasgow Celtic way. And they played football the Glasgow Celtic way.
Hello and welcome to the Celtic Ray podcast. My name is Stephen Ray. I am your host and I am joined again this week by Kevin McColgan. How are you doing, Kev?
Not too bad yourself?
I'm alright. Feeling better this week. I was a wee bit croaky last week. I wasn't well, but I hung in there. So
and you don't have COVID, so
and I don't have COVID. No, it was man flu, I think. And by the way, there's no fun a cure for that either. So. You know, and I've no shut down pubs for man flu, so.
I think that's where most people would probably go. I think if man flu was a thing, I would keep the pubs open for that.
Aye. So obviously it's been a bit of a quiet kind of fortnight. Not much Celtic stuff on, apart from some players playing for the international team. I only actually watched one of the games, which was the one we discussed just after, at the pod last week. I never watched the Czech Republic game. I don't know about yourself. Did you watch any of the second game?
I took my dad down to the pub. I says we normally go out on a Monday night just to get out, just to kind of start the week off, and it's no bad to start it off with a pint, I suppose. And I just realised it was actually the Scotland game, and I went and we watched it, and it was like watching paint dry that first half. It was shocking.
I just seen people going apeshit on Twitter talking about it, and I thought I'll see what this is about. And I literally watched 7 or 8 minutes of the first half. The last 7 or 8 minutes, it was 1-1 at the time, and I thought I'm not even coming out for the second half of this. So me and the wife just decided to watch the rest of the Fall on Netflix.
I
finished it.
You were doing better watching that. It was honestly atrocious, but it wasn't just the Scotland game. I just think the whole of the UEFA Nations League was just terrible. Like the Ireland game on Sunday, that would bore you to tears.
I know, I've seen a bit of that as well, and it was pretty poor stuff.
Jeez, just not for me. It never will be for me. I know Craig's listening to this, and he will say, it's internet, you should be passionate. Sorry, it just doesn't get me the same way.
It just doesn't. I think international football, I think clubs, you always find, even when you look at England, it's always their fans. England fans are generally followed by the sort of Championship, League One, League Two type teams, maybe bottom half Premier League. You know, you're very rarely seeing Liverpool or Manchester United type flags within their crowd. It's always like, you know, Peterborough United and stuff like that. And I just feel that maybe it's because they're not in Europe ever. You know, that's their kind of that's their sort of
staple.
Aye. Basically, that's their European adventure every year, following the national side. And I think that's probably true of Scotland fans as well. You find that it's I don't know how big a Scotland following there is in the West, but definitely, you know, you get a lot for the East and up North and stuff like that.
Anytime I was ever at a Scotland game, it used to be that you were always beside people from Aberdeen, Dundee and East, you know, Fife and all these places, you know, just places that didn't really have much, I suppose success is a hard word to say, but, you know, or excitement, you know.
Oh, these mad accents.
Eens and oohs and kens and ahs, oh, Jesus. Different universes. You know?
So Scotland was pretty boring, and the whole international break was pretty boring, to be honest. It's horrific stuff, man. And I've always argued that it must cost the economy a fortune more so when fans are at the stadium, or previously when pre-COVID. You know, when you think about all the teams that have to stop playing at the weekends because an international break, and the amount of fans that are not travelling back across the country, paying into games and getting into pubs and bars and takeaways and stuff like that, all these places must hate international break because they must lose money at it.
They don't get half as much the appeal or the footfall. I don't think. If somebody said to me, "Would you rather watch a club game or an international game?" It's going to be a club game.
Yeah.
I would rather go to the pub to watch it. It was just by chance that I take my dad to the pub on a Monday night. It was just why not? And then that was on. We were kind of keeping an eye on the Northern Ireland game as well because Elanushi scored a cracking goal in that.
Yes.
And a superb goal by Haaland, has to be said.
I seen that one as well. That was a peach.
Hit it on his left.
But
yeah.
Aye, so thank God it's all over and football's back this weekend and Celtic are away to Ross County and it's a 3 o'clock kickoff. It's not live on the telly and your only way of watching it is paying $15 to Ross County's TV, Ross County TV or whatever it's called, Chuckter Telly. Will you be paying to watch it?
I'm still debating it. I know myself though it'll come to tomorrow night, and me and my dad will hate the fact that we have to listen to it on radio. So yeah, I will be paying it. As much as I don't agree with it, I will be paying it because I want to see the game. That's what you want to see. You don't want the days of listening to it on the radio are long gone, I think. So if the opportunity is there, I'll need to pay it. As much as I don't agree with it.
I think the last game I listened to on the radio that was live on telly was the 4-3 away to Motherwell in Rodgers' first season. I know, I was gutted because I promised to take the boys. We went hill walking that day, and we were going up the Campsie Hills and stuff like that. And obviously, just before we got there, Roderick banged in the winner, and I'm like, oh, bastard, man, I wish I watched that. I wish we stayed in the house.
I was working on this Saturday as well, my old job, and I just quickly looking at my phone for Twitter updates, and all I could see was just like through my mates like Rockets Rother with like, I think we've won, you know what I mean, just with the capital letters that were coming through. So some games that you miss just by doing whatever, you kick yourself,
I can just see people paying for this and the system crashing. Part of me, but then again, it's not Celtic TV. It might actually work.
That's what I'm thinking. I actually think this is going to go absolutely swimmingly, and you're going to see people clapping saying, "Why can't this be done from a Highland League club essentially at one point?" And
I think Celtic are the only club in the league that are not offering any kind of pay-per-view service.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't get that. What is the reason behind that?
Won't make as much money probably. The same way they have off of the season tickets, which now under today's announcement seems we're going to. Well, we probably weren't ever going to see many games, but you're paying £600 for an okay service at the moment. I would say is the best way to put it. It's not been fantastic. It's not been what they thought it was going to be, as in this world class service. Not a chance has it been that. It's been a Celtic TV feed with a BT TV commentator.
Yeah,
and that's it. And for it charged £600, for this world class service. So we're going to get our first class. Maybe was the best way to put it. But I think Noah McGregor though says he believes that he will get 10,000 Celtic fans to buy this.
So what's that? 150k.
150k. Roughly. That's not a bad return for what he would normally get.
That's probably more than he would make on a match day probably from Celtic visiting.
Yeah, because that's only get about 2,000 seats at most, even if that. I think it can't be many more.
No.
Surely. I don't think it's even 2,000, is it?
No, I think the stadium holds about six and a half, maybe. So you're probably right, about 2,000 fans. So fair play if they get the money and Celtic fans pay it. I'm swithering whether to pay it or not. I've got that many bloody sports sort of subscriptions, to be honest, that you've got to kind of draw the line somewhere. But I think come 5 to 3, I'll probably cave in and watch it, to be honest, because
I couldn't leave it that long with my dad. I'm the person that used to do the technology, so I'll need a wee while just to kind of make sure it's working right.
All right.
It'll be either do we watch it up the stairs or do we watch it down the stairs, and
So would you reckon the lineup should be on Saturday?
Well, depends, doesn't it? I mean, does it go with the tried and tested, shall we say 4-2-3-1, or does he go for it with the two strikers up front?
Surely you throw Duffy straight in.
I would definitely throw Duffy straight in. The way he was talking in his interview, he seems raring to go, buzzing to be here.
Does that mean we stick with the same formation and either Ayer or Julian drops out, or do you think he moves to the three at the back?
Three at the back with Ayer and Julian, and then obviously Frimpong would be dropped then, wouldn't he? So, because it would be Forrest that would start, I would think, and then go with hopefully Ayeti and Edward.
I think the left hand side is the problem, because I think Taylor's got the energy to play up and down, but I don't think he's got the quality required for the final third to play wing back. I don't think El Yunusi is the type of player that should play wing back, because I don't think he's got the defensive quality.
No.
So, and then obviously Bolingoli's suspended and probably won't play for Celtic again, but he is probably the best fitted player for that position, because he'd have the cover of the three centre backs, and he is pretty good at going forward, although defensively he's not the best. So it's definitely a problem area, I think, for Celtic at the minute.
It's a problem that will need to be addressed, and I hope they do if they are going to go to the 3-5-2, because as you say, Elyounoussi, it'd be okay going forward, but he needs that bit of cover just behind him, just to help him. It's always whether the three could always just help him that bit,
Aye. Well, like I said a couple of times before, and I'm kind of don't want to sound like I'm totally repeating myself, but I do think Christie is a player we've got within the squad who can actually play that role. I think he's got the energy to play that role. I think he's pretty good at sort of closing down and winning tackles, and obviously I think he's really productive from the left. He's left-footed. I think his stats are better from being out wide than it is from being as a 10, but and move El Yunusi in one or in Cham, so because he's not going to drop Brown after Brown's comments today, I think.
No, definitely. But Brown's there to stay, as we've said many a time. It's going to take it would have to take an injury to put Brown out that team at the moment.
I think so. I can't see Brown dropping out until maybe 15, 16 games in. Depending on where everyone is in the league. I think he would have to have a really poor performance against Rangers to drop out this side, and that's not me wishing Brown out. It's just the kind of reality. I just don't think he should be playing like he was just before the break. He had 390 minutes in 8 days. I just think that's crazy. I think surely it's better to get maybe, I don't know, a second half out of Brown going full pelt for 45 rather than him trying to pace himself for a full 90 minutes, or even a final 30 minutes, I just think he needs to be used a lot more sparingly. Aye, because it's a big season, but it's not just the league. We need to try and get into Europe. We've still got a Scottish Cup for last season to finish. We've still got the League Cup and Scottish Cup for this season. He can't play 60 full games. I think he could probably play 30 full games and the rest, as a sub or coming off.
Still would
at least a half. But that can be the argument for McGregor as well, because I think McGregor gets overused. As fit as he is and as good as he is, there's got to come a time where these guys have got to be given a break. It's.
The thing is with McGregor, McGregor, like Tierney, is being used the same amount of times and the same amount of consistency, but they were never injured in their time apart from Tierney at the very last part, But there's got to be a time when they're going to eventually burn out, and I think McGregor seems to be showing signs of, as much as he's maybe at times the better player on the park with the performances that we've seen, there's got to be a time where we have to,
mix it up.
Loyalty has to go out the window, and we have to keep the team fresh.
Yeah.
Have to have the fresh legs going, because I think Lennon is a very loyal person to his loyal team members, shall we say?
Yeah.
And I think you have to just throw that right out the window and go with, I still would like to see Brown dropped just for a game. I'm not saying do it at a Rangers game. I'm not saying do that, God Almighty. But what I'm saying is you need to try these things.
See, you say drop, but I would say rotated. We've got at the minute effectively we've got 4 potential centre midfield players, that could play in Brown, McGregor, and Cham, and Turnbull now. So there's no point in having Turnbull and Encham, two guys that effectively were paid, what, £7-8 million for, between them, sitting on the bench. Both of them are younger than Brown and McGregor, and technically both of them are very good. So I'm not saying you play those two together, but, there should be a mix and match within the sort of mid to lower league games, if, teams like Kilmarnock, St Johnstone, Hamilton, Ross County, these games don't need your best 11 every week, I don't think. But I just think Lennon's got this thing about, unless we build up some massive lead over Rangers, I just think he's going to try and get his best, what he perceives as his best 11 out there every week. And I just think that could lead to a burnout. I just look at the Rangers team back in 97, 98. I mean, they were clearly a better team than Celtic on paper, but they just ran out of steam. They ran out of legs. Too many players went to the well too many times, and I just fear that Lennon might fall into that same loyalty that Walter Smith had back then. That these guys have been here, done it, and they deserve to sort of see it out. And in the end, they end up not doing it at all. There's
because they were knackered. They were literally knackered, and they'd done it, but their bodies were telling them slightly different.
Aye, I mean, that's just my only fear. I don't want to come across pessimistic. I think the best 11. If the best 11 as far as Lennon's concerned has got Brown in it, then fair enough. But I'd just like to think that he's got enough about him to go, do you know what, this isn't working, or this team needs fresh legs or new energy or whatever. I just never ever liked that tried and tested thing where you're just consistently playing the same 8 to 10 guys every week, and there's only maybe one dropping out, and it's the same guys that are dropping out all the time. So
it's always good to have a change. That's I think what we'll leave it at, and hopefully that there is the odd wee change. But if I'm being brutally honest with myself, I can't see it. But at the same time, as long as we get the result, which is always a tricky place to go, I think, very tight park, not the best of surfaces.
See, for me, this is a game that Brown probably should start. It's a tight pitch, like you say. It's going to be a tough. It's going to be a battle in midfield, or they're going to try and turn it into a battle in midfield. Mm-hmm. But for the final 30 minutes, I think that when things start to open up and the Ross County start to tire, that's where I think Brown comes out and then Cham goes in, and you've got a bit more creativity in the midfield. I just don't want to, but he's got to make that change early enough. It can't be the last 12 minutes or whatever. And I'm hoping that this weekend we're not going to see another, display for Christie where he's taking between 8 and 10 shots, pop shots from 30 yards, because that kind of slowly turns into, not playing for the team, almost playing for himself in a way.
I can see the point of that, but all I can see is if he could just improve his corners, I think it would be a bit better.
Yeah.
What
I don't understand is these corners are pretty poor, but then you look at the free kicks he takes from sort of wide areas. You look at the one in the cup final, for example, where he put it right on Julien's toe. It was an unbelievable free kick he took from the left-hand side.
Absolute pinpoint. But
when he's taking shots from cutting in from the right, as he was against Dundee United, most of them were on target and of good power and sort of head and top corner kind of risk. So it's mental how somebody can be pretty good at shooting for distance, but then dead ball corner kicks are shite and hit the first man.
Look at his hat trick against St Johnstone in the opening day of last season. Yeah. They're all from the left hand side.
Yeah.
And they're apart from the second one taking that wicked deflection, but the first and the third were rockets into the net at exact same shots. But I think if he goes for the furthest away side, he never gets it. If he goes for the kind of near post, he's a bit better that way.
Right. So I'll throw it at you. Who would your team be? And what team do you think will play or start?
Right. Well, obviously Barkas in goal, obviously. Yep. And then I personally would like to see a 3-5-2. So I would go with the Julian, Duffy, and Ayer.
Does that mean Julian moves to the right of the three, or is he still central?
Oh, I would move Julian to the left and move Aya to the right of the three.
Because Aya generally plays on the left-hand side, doesn't he?
Yeah. Sorry, that wasn't in order. It's just that was it.
No, I'm just throwing it out there because something I was thinking about myself, to be honest.
And then obviously on the right, I personally would like to see Frimpong. That's who I would like to see.
Yep.
Obviously it's going to be Brown and McGregor. Probably either.
This is your team. I'm saying no Lennon's team. So you want Brown in?
Yeah. Well, it's going to be Brown, but I would prefer to maybe see McGregor and Cham then if it's going to be my team, and then Brown sitting out, and then I would like to see. I would maybe take on board what you said with regards to maybe trying Christie or Elyounoussi, in the number 10 role, and then Christie on the left to see how it goes. Just for a while, and then obviously it's got to be a Yeti and Edward up front, and that's what I think it will be for my side. However, I think he's still going to do the 4-2-3-1 because I think we'll still get the excuse of Yeti's not match fit and a Duffy's no match fit or whatever at the moment.
Even though he captained Ireland two games in a row.
This is what you'll see that, but this is what you'll get. I think you will get this sort of excuse with Lennon. And you're thinking, wait a minute, he's just played, so why not? But that I wouldn't be surprised. Put it that way. And then maybe Turnbull could come on in the second half to see if he could show us a wee bit what he could do. Certainly, I'd like to see that sub made. Maybe replace him for Elyounoussi in the second half, just to see what he could do.
You wouldn't have Turnbull playing left back, would you?
No.
Have you seen the YouTube podcast where the guy suggests that?
I have not. No.
No. I like Paul John Dyke's podcast, Celtic State of Mind, but one of his colleagues on there, he made a comment the other week that he thinks why not play Turnbull at left back, and he's been getting it tight ever since, to be honest.
that's as good as McGregor playing at left back. We all know how that story goes. So.
I know.
I'm sorry. John put his Albert.
It wasn't Paul John that said it. It was one of his.
He's one of his pals. I'm sorry, but that is Tosh.
Sorry, Paul. But it's a good podcast, and it's on every day on YouTube. So he's Daily Bulletin. So I definitely check that out. For me, if I was picking a team, I'd be the same as yourself, 3-5-2. I'd go Barkas. I would probably have Duffy centre. I'd stick with Ayer and Julian either side. Ayer on the left, Julian on the right. Mm-hmm. The midfield, sort of two central midfielders, I'd have McGregor and Cham. Mm-hmm. On the left, I would probably play Forrest. And on the right, I would probably play Christie. I'd play Mo Elyounoussi in behind, and I'd have Edward and Ajeti up front. Mm-hmm. But I think you might see something along those lines from would you call him Neil Lennon?
Yeah.
I think he will go with Barkas and the three centre backs as we've mentioned, but he'll go with Brown and McGregor. Mm-hmm. I think he'll go with Cham at 10, and I think he'll go with Christie on the right. I think he'll go with Forrest on the left, and I think he will have Ajeti and Edward up front. That's what I think.
And I think that is probably true, but Forrest just doesn't work on the left. I just don't see what he thinks he's going to prove from consistently.
I think he played well in the 3-5-2 when we played away at Lazio. He was really good that night on the right hand side. I think on the left, I think he likes the fact that Forrest, because we've not really got a focal point striker. Well, in saying that, we've got Ajeti now, but I think he likes Forrest and Christie cutting inside the way Gordon Strachan used to do it with Nakamura and Maloney, where he'd have them playing on the opposite sides where they would cut in more for shooting and stuff like that. So I can see him going down that road. I think Mo Elyounoussi might drop out, to be honest.
The thing is, I really like Ellis as a player. It'd be great
yeah.
if we could just fit him in somewhere, because I think he could be integral to
Yeah.
getting us those important goals that make a season.
I actually had a look at the Norway side at the weekend to see how they lined up, and it was pretty much a 4-4-2 with El Yunusi on the left. But he was cutting right in, and obviously he took that ball down just sort of 10 yards out and scored. It was a cracking take finish.
One touch, bang! It was great. It really was good. As I say, I would like to see him in, but you could be right in the fact that it could be dropped. But I mean,
I would just hate to think that he's a player of that value and that quality. It comes to Celtic, and we just never see the absolute best of him because we've never been able to find the position or a pattern that fits him best.
Or tactic or a
aye.
It would be a shame, but I think there is a position for him. Definitely, I think that case has been argued and that is probably has been proven. But I do think we could be more fluid with a 3-5-2, and if he could just be somewhere within it, then I think I think having him in there somewhere can only help. That would be my idea.
Yeah. I
personally would like to see him in the number 10. I would try him there, and then I think we have a very suitable replacement in obviously Christie, because he likes to play there as well. Ish, and Turnbull as well, because I think Turnbull's better as an attacking midfielder than as a defensive midfielder.
It kind of brings me on to my next subject, because there's only so much you can talk about a game against Ross County away from home. That apparently the Tom Rogic deal to the Middle East has broken down, and he's going to be staying at Celtic for the foreseeable. He's still got 3 years of a contract to go. Like I said a few weeks ago, I still believe that Tom Rogic on his day is our best number 10. Mm-hmm. And it was a game was on Sky last night. It was showing, old firm, highlights, as they like to call it.
Greatest games.
The greatest games. And it was the game we won 2-0 at Ibrox in 2017, the 2017-18 season. We won 2-0. Tom Rogic scored and Griffiths scored. But watching him in that first half, the amount of times he picked the ball up on the half turn and was feeding Kieran Tierney and Sinclair and everyone. Honestly, he absolutely was outstanding that day. And obviously, he nearly scored in the first minute with an absolute belter of a shot for about 30 yards. What I noticed about that game is the Rangers fans were pretty boisterous at kick-off, and then Rogic hit that shot on about 55 seconds. And all of a sudden there was a hush over the stadium as if to say, "Oh no, we've got another 5-1 coming."
I was actually at that game. I was lucky enough to get a ticket, and like you said, it was very, very boisterous, and it's because I hadn't been. The last time I was at Ibrox was, oh god, when was the last time there? It was when Zheng Zi made his debut for us, in the Mowbray season. That was the last time I was at Ibrox, and as you say, that was some shot he hit in the first minute. But the clear thing I remember about that game was the amount of times that Morelos was caught offside.
Yes.
Every 2 minutes. I mean, I was like, can this guy make a run or what? But what a goal he scored to just hit it on the turn almost. Yeah. I think it was that. Was it Hodgson or something that was in front of him, and he just hit it right into the roof of the net. Oh, it was fantastic.
That's what I love about Rogic is. Maybe not so much in Europe, but definitely domestically, the amount of times he picks the ball up in the half turn, and just that half turn just sets up so much, because the opposition are just no set up for it. And like I said, that first half, the amount of times he kept feeding Sinclair and Kieran Tierney on the left, they just couldn't cope with Rogic. It was almost as if he had a free roll, and he was just unplayable that day. And I just think if he can get back to anywhere close to that kind of level. And even if it is only 60 to 70 minutes a game, it doesn't matter, because he'll have done that much damage within that period. It's always the argument, he's definitely got more, I feel he's got more quality and creativity than Christie, but Christie will give you 95 to 100 minutes a game, non-stop energy. So it's, pick your fighter almost,
I, for one, am delighted that he is staying for the foreseeable.
I hope he does.
I do think, though, with someone that 3 years on his contract, it was a low fee, given it is a Qatari club as well, because they do have, with respect, a bit of money to burn.
I think the way it'll be argued is the lack of game time over the last 2 or 3 years that's affected the value. Because if Tom Rogic was a 50 game a season guy and playing and finishing maybe 35 to 40 of the games, I think you're looking at a £10 million player. But minimum. But because of his injury record and his lack of ability to finish so many games, it definitely affects his value. So
I suppose there is that argument as well. But I, for one, am delighted, but it's whether, as you say, he might get the fitness up, but will he get anywhere near the side?
Yeah. So next subject comes for a question. Didn't get that many questions this week just because I was a bit late in body putting out the tweet for questions. But French Eddie, not and his sign here is at Bobo French Eddie. He wants to make his mind up.
Who do you like better?
You can't get much different than a cultured player like Eddie versus an absolute cannonball wrecker in Bobo Baldy. But he's just wrote, do we go for PR7? Yes, yes, yes. Obviously, this is on the back of some rumours coming out for some Man City sort of Twitter accounts today, or fan Twitter accounts, basically saying that City are open to listening to the offers, £2 to £3 million. If it's £2 to £3 million, for me, I think it's a no-brainer.
You've got to take that. You've got to take that chance.
But is he a Neil Lennon type signing? That's the next question.
Well, I think he would suit well. As I say, but I don't know if it's maybe a bit like Elyounoussi. Like, would he be suited to that right hand side of the 3-5-2? But the thing with Roberts is you've always just got someone who's got a bag of tricks, and it's always a different trick every time he tries something. To get past a player. I do think he's someone that would pull you out the hat. Could run the game for you a bit like Rogic. You might not see him for the whole game. You will get the full game out of him, but you might not see him for the whole game, but he'll just produce that one moment of magic that could get you there sometimes. I personally think if it's for 2 or 3 million, I personally would like to see it, but given the fact we've already spent quite a lot of money with this PLC, can't see it.
I look at the two games. Obviously, that one I spoke about that was on last night, the highlights, and obviously the 5-1 game at Ibrox as well. And I thought both games, Paddy Roberts was outstanding in both. He set that through pass he gave to Griffiths for the second was just to split the defence in two. And I just think he's got that about him. Forrest is a kind of more run at players, maybe we get you more goals, but Roberts is more creative, I think. I know it's hard to say. Juco James put up some numbers today, and both players are pretty close on the numbers and stuff. So I think they pushed each other, to be fair. When they both played. So
I think the thing with Forrest, as you say, he will run at them. Might not always get there, but might get to the byline, might get a cross in, whatever it may be. Roberts, with evidence, he has that ability to unlock the defence with a pass and then we're in. Because if you look at the 2-1 game where Dembele and Sinclair scored, he passed it to Armstrong and the Rangers defence didn't see it and they got it to Armstrong and it was a goal, because they were expecting the ball to be flighted in. He's played it round to Armstrong and it was a great goal. And then also the same game, the 4-3 game, I think it's Roberts plays the ball to Armstrong. It's a cracking pass and Armstrong just hits it on the turn as well. And I'm sure that was Roberts that played that defence splitting pass.
I think it was actually. Aye.
I think it was
Roberts scored a head on that game as well, didn't he?
Which is even more interesting.
So, Paddy Roberts, it's a yes from us, but we don't necessarily think it will be a yes from Neil Lennon or the board. Also, what else comes?
Yes, I think it would.
I think so. I think it'd be a cracking signing. What also come up? Plus, I think there's a potential that Christie might want to leave as well. There's rumours that Christie's no signing a new deal, and he's only got 2 years to run. So there is that. The other news that came up today, apparently Ralph Hasenhüttl, the Southampton manager, said that McCarthy's going to remain his number one, and either Foster or Gunn are going to go out on loan. So I've seen a few folks saying, try and get Foster back, but you don't pay £5 million for a goalkeeper.
No, absolute slap in the face to Barkas if you're going to do that.
I don't think Barkas has necessarily done anything wrong. I know people have looked at the goals against Ferencváros, but for me, I think any keeper can get megged, you know. Well, in the Copenhagen game, Foster get megged for one of the goals, you know, where he came out to close the guy down, the guy just put it under him. So
you've got to give goalkeepers time as well, because Foster in these first couple of periods, there was dodgy periods with Foster where he wouldn't come out for a ball sometimes, and I think even in that last season there, you're just screaming to come out sometimes. He just wouldn't. He would just stay in his line a wee bit too much. I do think
Fraser Foster didn't become the keeper we had last season, you know, overnight. That took a while to get to that level. If you look at Fraser Foster's first season at Celtic, you know, there was a lot of grumblings and groans, and if you remember the first Rangers Celtic game, we lost 3-1 at home. He caused one of the goals, you know, with a poor kick out and stuff like that, and he was just a bit all over the shop. I mean, he did eventually turn into a great keeper for us, but it took time, you know, and he didn't have the strongest of defences in front of him, and you could argue that our defence at the minute is not looking overly confident. So Barkas is, you know, he's having to deal with that, but you've got to give the guy time. He's an international goalkeeper for Greece. He's played Champions League, he's played Europa League with AEK Athens. You know, which the Greek league's a league at least, if anything, you'd probably argue it's stronger than ours. So I don't see the problem. You paid the money, you've got to give the guy time.
Exactly, you've got to give the guy time, and I think personally he's a lot more composed on the ball than what Foster ever was.
I think so as well.
Because I think when Foster got the ball, it was just like hoof it up the park, but Barkas seems to have that ability to kind of think, right, there's a free player there, well, let's give the ball to him, and nothing seems to faze him. Okay, people will argue about the goals, but quite give him time. Come on, you know.
I know. Well, I think what was I going to say? He does look pretty comfortable. But I think he overestimates the skill of our centre backs at times, where he'll give them a pass in a pretty dodgy situation, you know, rather than just hoof it. I think he's loath to hoof it up the park. I think he's always looking to try and find a player in space. So, you know, he's probably more suited to the way Brendan Rodgers wanted to play than Craig Gordon was.
Just about to say that, you know, he would like that kind of just play it out from the back and try and keep a pass and make an attack, whereas Lennon is definitely more hoof it at times.
Yeah. So apart from that, there's not really been much talk of incomings. There's maybe some grumblings of a guy from Charlton, I think.
Doherty. I think is his name, and for 750,000 seems like
I know hee-haw about him, to be honest.
And then there was rumblings in the Scottish something they were chasing a winger from QPR, but I'm not heard much from that before I saw that this morning. Literally, it was a rumour. It wasn't a headline of a story. So
just hashtag make something up and stick it in the paper on it.
A bit like the Morelos bingo that seems to link him with a club every day. You know?
To be fair, that Daily Record parody account's caught out a few folk, to be fair.
That caught me out this morning, so I was thinking, surely to God they would not abandon their Basque-only policy. Bilbao just to sign Morelos.
I know. So, in regards to transfers it's very quiet at the minute. I still think we need a couple of players. But Bolingoli, apparently Roma have denied even wanting the player or thinking about the player, so looks like
can't blame them in the slightest.
You don't go for Kolarov to Bolingoli, that's for sure, because they just sold him to Inter, or he's just moved on to Inter. So yeah, it's been a pretty quiet week, so I thought, well, we need to find something else to talk about to at least get an hour in on the podcast. So I'd seen a bit of a debate going on Twitter with some people talking about the best captain since Billy McNeil, and I think it's, you know, nobody's ever going to argue that Billy McNeil was and always will be unless somebody comes in and does, you know, 9 in a row or 10 in a row and wins a European Cup and then makes another European Cup final. You know, that title's never ever going to come away from Billy McNeil. But the fact that he won it, you know, against pretty strong Latin opposition at the time with the likes of Madrid and the Milans and stuff like that, to get to two European Cup finals and win 9 in a row against a pretty strong Rangers team who made 2 European finals in that period as well. You know, I think that title will always remain with him. So the argument was, you know, who's been the greatest captain since? So I put it into 3 polls because there's been 9 club captains for Celtic since the great man. So in poll 1, I had King Kenny, who was 75 to 77, Danny McGrain, 77 to 87, and then Roy Aitken, 87 to 90. So the clear winner in that poll was Danny McGrain with 75%. Roy Aitken only gets 17%, and Kenny Dalglish get 8. So, I think people have looked at the time frame, and obviously more people probably seen Roy Aitken play than King Kenny for Celtic, that's for sure. Then poll 2 was Paul McStay, 90 to 97, Tom Boyd, 97 to 02, and Paul Lambert, 02 to 04. I was quite surprised at the poll for this, and the winner was Paul McStay with 73% of the vote. Tom Boyd get 15 and Paul Lambert get 12. I find that unbelievable, if I'm honest.
I think people, I must admit, I was shocked with that. I'm sorry to butt in there.
That's right.
Looking, when we'll come on to the stats in a minute, and I know stats isn't everything, but when you look at what the other captains certainly achieved and certainly the games they played in, I think there's a case to say that I think a lot of people are holding up, like they're playing with a bit of loyalty.
Yeah.
Paul McStay. And okay, there's no getting away from that. Paul McStay was a great servant for Celtic and always will be. But there's other cases to be made for better captains, in my opinion.
Yeah. So the final poll 3 was Jackie McNamara, 04-05. He only get 2%. Neil Lennon, 05 to 07, 7%. Steve McManus, 07 to 10, 1%. And Scott Brown to present, 90%. Now, that was always going to be Scott Brown. But,
by the debate last night, it was always going to be.
I want to know who picked Jackie McNamara. That's what I want to know. There was 275 people voted on that one, and 2% picked Jackie McNamara in the season that we lost the league on the final day away to Motherwell.
I think they were maybe just thinking, a long-serving player, right, just pick him,
Yeah.
Maybe they picked him half asleep,
So that led me to, I said on it, I'd pick the top 3 from each poll, and then the player with the highest percentage after that. So the final 4 came down to Danny McGrain, Roy Aitken, Paul McStay, and Scott Brown. And the final results was 22% for Danny McGrain, 6% Roy Aitken, 16% Paul McStay, and 56% Scott Brown. Do you think we needed more Celtic Daz on this poll?
Wholeheartedly, yes. I think if we posted this out to every letterbox in the west of Scotland, you would have had differing results, shall we say? Because I think there was a lot of love for Scott Brown,
yeah.
Which I don't see a problem with, really. I really don't. But it's more to the fact that I think there's cases to be made for. Certainly, I'm not saying I've ever seen Roy Aitken or Danny McGrain or even Paul McStay for that matter, but I think there's cases to be made that what they achieved is slightly better.
Yeah. I would argue, and people may pull me up on this, but I would argue that Scott Brown was the least talented out of the final 4.
I would agree with that, because if you look at Danny McGrain, for example, for the start, right?
Considered one of the best fullbacks in world football.
Exactly. So therefore, if it's on ability, which it isn't all, right, but there you go, there's one thing already. Okay. He was captain of the Scotland 1982 World Cup as well. Got us to the World Cup. That's got to go in your favour. Stayed pretty much his whole career at Celtic as well. And
he'd won last season at Hamilton and he got them promoted.
So pretty much a one club man. And I think that, to me, plays a lot into it. Okay, in my eyes. I just think, but I would certainly agree that Scott Brown was the least talented. Scott Brown, when he first came, would give you energy and goals. That's what he was signed as. He didn't
box to box.
Yeah, he didn't have skills, as it were. It was just, he was a bit of a dick sometimes when he was playing it for Hibs against us. That's what we kind of liked about him. That's what he still like about him, because he's up and at them. He has that fighting mentality. He has the winning mentality. He gets in about players. He annoys them, and he does. He is a good footballer, but he's not.
I think he's turned into a good
football.
footballer. I think he's turned into a clever footballer, and I think he lost his way for a while, especially under Ronnie Dyler. That era, I think he was played. To be fair to him, I think he was unfit, especially in that second season of Dyler, and it showed up. He showed up really poor in that semi-final against Rangers, where we lost in penalty kicks, where he practically get the runaround on the day. I think when Rodgers came in, I definitely think he gave his career a real boost, and I think for the first two seasons of Rodgers, I think Scott Brown was the main man, so to speak. He was the engine room. He was the heart of the team, and I think he helped. I think that season, if we've not got Scott Brown, we don't go undefeated. That's the praise that I can give him for that. I think a Scott Brown less team that season, Celtic don't go invincible. They might still win a treble, but they don't go undefeated. I don't think. So that's.
The thing is, he will be remembered as a very, very good Celtic player for us.
Yes.
Looking back in history, he will be that. But to say he's the best Celtic captain, and it's no disrespect, and obviously people will disagree with this, but there's been better out there, because I think you picked up on it. I think it was someone replied when we started this thread that every one of the 9 seasons, if it wasn't for him, we would be winning out all the league.
My argument is
there's not.
Would Celtic
this season?
Would Celtic have won 9 in a row during this era without Scott Brown? And my answer to that is yes.
Mm-hmm. Because there was a couple of seasons where he probably, if it wasn't for Rodgers coming in, there is the possibility he could have been going. He maybe thought he had enough of it.
Well, after that Rangers game, if someone turned around and said Scott Brown will be leaving at the end of the season, I don't think there would have been a big clamour at the time.
No, because the fans were getting on his back before that game.
Yeah,
I remember rightly, and in that game, he was shocking.
Well, the argument was that Brown and Beaton are done. They're no use together. It's Brown's finished. His legs are gone. And if Brown had left at the end of that season, I know hindsight's a wonderful thing, but I just remember the arguments at the time. And I remember when he went down to meet with Brendan Rodgers, and there was a talk that Rodgers wanted to keep him, and I was really surprised at that Rodgers wanted to keep him. I didn't see him as being somebody that Rodgers would try and build a team around. But fair play to him, Brown had come out the following season, he was an absolute driving force. He was absolutely fantastic, and he made everyone sort of put egg on their face type thing, or eat humble pies, as it were.
He thrived off of it, essentially. He thrived off of everybody kind of saying, "Oh, you're finished."
Aye.
So he kind of, I think he feeds off of that, and he comes back and he's better. He's basically saying, "F yous, I done it."
Well, he probably assessed his own performance in that game against Rangers and thought that will never happen again.
Mm-hmm.
But it will happen again, because Father Time eventually does catch up with you. It just, your legs eventually will go. So the argument, I can understand the argument that people have picked Scott Brown. Obviously, he's got the most trophies out of them all, which you could argue that he should have had more trophies as captain during the period, because Rangers fans argue that it's not a real 9 in a row or not a real 10 in a row because they weren't there for X amount of years there and all that kind of thing. But I think there's an argument to be made about the level of competition these captains come up against. Now, Danny McGrain was up against not only a pretty strong Rangers team in the late 70s, but he was up against a Dundee United team who made a European Cup semi-final, and an Aberdeen team who actually won a European trophy. Hearts were pretty strong in the mid-80s as well, where we win the league in the last day and they bottle merchant it. You've got Roy Aitken, who was the captain for the centenary year, probably one of the most important seasons of the club's history, and then obviously won the Scottish Cup the year after, stopping Rangers doing a pretty strong Rangers team doing a treble that had money thrown at it. So Roy Aitken, And then Paul McStay, who was, you could probably argue, was the most talented out of that four, but was the least successful as a captain. He only had one trophy in those 7 years as captain. And I think I think Paul McStay was a great player, but I don't think Paul McStay was a great Celtic captain. But so people would say, where would Celtic have been without Scott Brown? And I think, well, during this 9 in a row period, I still think we would have won 9 in a row. But the same people would say, what state would Celtic have been in if Paul McStay left? If it wasn't for the likes of him and John Collins sticking around, what sort of fucking state would we have been in? And that's a really strong argument to have as well. I just look at it as Paul McStay was a great player. He stayed too loyal to the club during a period he probably should have moved on for his own career rather than but I think he was a true Celtic man, and he didn't want to sort of leave the club, and maybe he was a home bird, so to speak. So I'm not going to criticise the guy for no leaving. I just think you've just got to look at he had opportunities to win trophies when Rangers weren't the opposition, and we still didn't do it. We lost semi-finals to Motherwell, we lost a final to Raith Rovers, we lost, numerous other cup games to Falkirk and all that type of thing, and we'd a number of times we could have won and I think a real true captain, a Roy Aitken type or a Scott Brown type mentality might have seen us over the line on some of the games.
The thing I get, I can't confess to ever seen Paul McStay, but when you hear of the stories of Danny McGrain and the Roy Aitkins and even Scott Brown, Paul McStay doesn't strike me as a man that would galvanise the team when it needs to be done. I think there is cases, and there's people that I've heard on Twitter saying that, like, even in the last season of McStay as being captain, a lot of emphasis was put on not McStay but almost Di Canio, Cadet and Van Hooijdonk. And instead of it being, Paul McStay to galvanise the team, it was, well, let's just try and give the ball to, Van Hooijdonk, Cadet and Di Canio. I just don't. He doesn't strike me as a person that would do it. And I think that there's a case to be said that, well, the next season after he leaves, we do get the league title.
Yeah.
Okay, you could maybe bring in the 9 in a row and blah blah blah, but I think there's always been a case for that. And we might say, oh, that's a weak argument. Well, okay, but look what history says. And I think with Danny McGrain and Roy Aitken, I've got to agree. I mean, the Danny McGrain won 8 Scottish League titles, 5 Scottish Cups, 2 League Cups, when there was 4, possibly 5 strong teams.
Yes.
That is, to me, that's got to win the argument.
For me, I think Danny McGrain is only surpassed by Scott Brown if Scott Brown gets 10 in a row. Because I think Celtic have only really been challenged in the last year or two max for this title. And I think this season will be the toughest, and obviously with what's going on with COVID and no fans and all that sort of jazz, I think this will be the toughest test that we'll have had since probably his second season as captain, where we should have won the league, but we didn't. A big captain, you could argue, would have got us over the line in Lennon's first season, and they didn't. So, I'm not taking away from what Scott Brown's done. To win 3 trebles back-to-back, potentially a 4th still to come, win 10 in a row. I think if he does all that, then I think the argument stands up. But as it stands just now, for me personally, I think, and even though I hadn't seen much Danny McGrain when I was younger, I think you just look at the numbers, you look at the standard of the league, and you look at everything he achieved, nearly 700 games for the club and stuff like that. Yeah. I think the guy is easily the best captain since Billy McNeil, in my opinion. But it's a generational thing, I think. And Danny McGrain's not my generation. Roy Aitken, Paul McStay is more my generation, if he's younger, growing up watching Celtic.
See, the thing is, like, my first captain really was Tom Boyd, then it was Paul Lambert, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
But you've got to look at it, and people will say, you should be going for it because Scott Brown will. No, you have to look at it as the bigger picture. In my opinion, you can't just go, well, I've seen Scott Brown, so it has to be Scott Brown. Well, no, that's not true. You have to take all arguments into consideration. I mean, Danny McGrain and Roy Aitken, there's not much to split them in terms of appearances. with 667 appearances for Roy Aitken and 679 for Danny McGrain. There is not a lot, but as you say, Danny McGrain, member of the greatest ever Celtic side, member of Scotland Hall of Fame, captain of the 1982 World Cup, and he played 5 times for Scotland in the World Cup finals matches, and in those matches they never lost a game.
Yeah,
I think that's quite a remarkable stat.
Yeah. I mean, you look at the poll 2 with McStay, Boyd and Lambert. McStay wins that by a country mile. But Paul, for me, Tom Boyd is the captain of the side and arguably Celtic's most important season since the European Cup winning side. You know,
he strikes me as a person that could galvanise the team, because when you see that huddle when just before they go for the St Johnstone game, he's kind of giving it the kind of the arms up, come on, let's do this, and just being a captain. I just could be wrong, and people will say, but you never saw McStay. Well, I might never have saw McStay, but it just doesn't strike me as a person that would galvanise a team to say, if I was in that position, I would rather have Boyd as my captain than I would McStay. Well,
for me, and I don't agree with some of these points he's made in the paper today about Rangers should have only got a fine or whatever it was, but Paul Lambert took Celtic to a European final, something I never thought I'd ever see in my life. In my lifetime, obviously, he won a couple of league titles against a pretty strong Rangers side as well, and a Scottish Cup as captain. So, and obviously he was part of the side that won, stopped Rangers doing 10 in a row, although he wasn't captain, it was Tom Boyd. But, I just find it mental that Paul McStay won that poll by, Paul McStay, for me, is probably the most talented player out of the three. But for me, I think it's a toss-up between Paul Lambert and Tom Boyd in regards to the achievement they done as captain. And I think that's where the argument, people need to think about the argument, is it's Celtic captain, not who's the best player,
I think
in poll 1, if it's best player, Kenny Dalglish wins it,
Yeah, of course.
So.
The thing is as well, though, right, it could be seen almost as a popularity vote.
Yes.
Because if you go on Twitter, right, and somebody might put up a Paul McStay video, it'll get numerous likes, numerous retweets, and views going through the roof. If it's a Paul Lambert or a Tom Boyd, nobody's going to watch it. But they need to take into consideration that they were maybe better captains. Well,
it's a debate that could go on forever. I don't disagree with people who choose Brown, because if you're choosing it on trophy halls, then by all means he's going to win that hands down. But I just think 10 years as captain, numerous titles against a really strong league. You could argue it was one of the strongest leagues in Europe at the time. When you look at Dundee United, made a European final, made a European Cup semi-final. Aberdeen won a European final. Won the wooden shield after it against Hamburg in the I think it's now called what do they call it now? The Super Cup. I don't think it was classed as a Super Cup then. It was like a wooden shield. So they claimed they won 2 European trophies, but it wasn't. So
let them claim it, because they don't.
Let them claim it. And obviously Rangers late 70s, very early 80s were pretty strong. They kind of fell away for a few years until the Souness era, but and then obviously Hearts were pretty strong and stuff like that. So I just think until Brown wins 10, I think it's an argument that many people will have and have their favourites.
There's no doubting that Brown will go down in history and has rightfully earned his place in history should the season go as it was.
Absolutely.
But there's nothing to say that he has earned the right to be named or blessed the best Celtic captain.
Yeah.
But
it's an argument that's going to rage on, and hopefully it will rage on even longer when people hear the podcast. But Brown's been a great captain for Celtic. He's been a great Celtic player, a great Celtic servant. His time will ultimately come to an end in the next year or so. I think. I hope he leaves on a high, having achieved the 10. But it's a massive season for him, and I just hope that he's able to try for one season to raise his game to the 2016-17 levels, because for me that was his best season ever at Celtic. So
it was. I mean, there's absolutely no doubt that he was fantastic, and he will always go down as the captain of the invincible Invincible treble, which
Absolutely.
was a fantastic side, a fantastic season, and as I say, rightfully earns his place in history.
Yep.
But there's no divine right to be named as best Celtic captain. And just a last thing to say is, a lot of people are clouding their judgment on how successful we have been, but then you go back to the quality of the opposition.
Yeah.
And you can only play what you've got in front of you, but you've got to look at the bigger picture, I think.
Well, I hope the argument rages on, because it's nobody's right, nobody's wrong. I don't think in this one, to a point. I mean, if somebody says Jackie McNamara is the greatest Celtic captain, then I'm going to argue with them.
We should bring them on the podcast. I think
Jackie was a great Celtic player, but he took over the captaincy at the tail end of a great side, and obviously boo-boo. And if he won that league title that year, then obviously it would have been a good argument, but obviously we didn't. So, but on that note, I think we'll call it at that. There's no point in dragging it out any longer. People are going to hopefully tune in and go, "You're talking shite," or "I agree," or "I don't agree," or whatever. It doesn't matter. I mean, it's not about me or you being correct. I think it's just about stirring debate, and debate's good as far as
healthy debate. So tweet us if you want and give us all the abuse you want. But
yeah, well, you can get me at the Celtic Ray. And you can get yourself at WeKev1888.
Yep. So I think very easy to remember.
Cool. Well, thanks again for joining us. I'm going to have to shoot off because my boy's football training tonight, and I don't want to be late for him because it's pissing rain. So on that note,
see you later, Stephen.
Catch you soon. Cheers.
Bye bye.
And they gave us change.